for me, money always exposes what's already in you in terms of your value system. It makes you more of who you are. Yeah. And so for me, I know that because I was raised in service and I was raised in giving back and I was raised in being a blessing to other people, I know that the more money I make, the more good I'm going to do in the world. I think if I constantly keep that on the forefront of my mind, then any situation that I walk into, it's almost like I'm assuming that it's going to be a success. I'm assuming it's going to work out.
Sure.
Because there's nothing but good that's going to come from it.
How's it going, guys? Welcome to another episode of Secrets of Silent Success. Today we have the one and only Benjamin J. Vann. How are you doing today, sir?
Man, I'm doing great. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we'll jump right into it?
Let's jump right into it.
Cool. So you're the founder and CEO of Impact Ventures, out there reducing those barriers for minorities and Black Americans to get funding, to get capital for the entrepreneurial endeavors around tech and things of that nature. I want to hear about your entrepreneurial journey and the amazing work you all are doing at Impact Ventures.
Definitely. I mean, well, thanks of all. I appreciate the platform that you're providing.
Yeah.
I'm here to tell the untold stories.
There you go.
And so excited to share a little bit about my journey. But I think like most folks, it starts in the home, right? I grew up with a family of entrepreneurs.
Awesome.
So kind of got an MBA, straight out of birth, right? My father was a pastor of a church. Okay. So in our family kind of went two ways. It was either entrepreneur or clergy. And both of them kind of are the same, because, there is a business side to running a church.
Sure.
But he also owned an automotive shop, trucking company, landscaping business.
Yeah.
My grandmother was also an entrepreneur.
Okay.
She had a seamstress business where she would sew our Christmas and Easter, clothes and stuff like that, reversible vests and all that. But she had a slogan of sewing souls for the kingdom. So for me, entrepreneurship and really, I say ministry, I like to say that I'm preaching the gospel of economics.
Sure.
And my pulpit just looks different, you know. But it's transforming people's lives, how you look at it. And so that was kind of the origins. But my very first business that I didn't even know was really a business at the time, because I like to say entrepreneurs, they exist to solve problems, right?
Yep.
And so it started with hair, right? Okay. So as you know, growing up as a young Black boy, we grew up, like I said, we like to say church broke, where we dressed up on Sundays really well, but you could never tell, how we were really living. And so we didn't go to the barbershop. I had a big family, grew up in a household of 4.
Okay.
So I had a haircut, which some might know as the chili bowl. And so, through the growing years of being a kid, I got kind of tired of being teased of, not having a nice, barbershop official cut instead of the home, dad hookup.
Yeah.
So I started cutting my own hair, cutting my brother's hair. Okay. Then as I got older, played basketball, football, track, I was kind of the team, designated as the team barber.
Yeah, got all the clients.
Right. So colleges on Thursday nights before everybody's going out, I got a line out the door, everybody trying to get a line up, before we go out for the evening back in college. And so that was kind of my first business, venture into business. And for me, I kind of always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. I just didn't know what my thing was going to be.
Sure.
And that really started with a book called Why Do White Guys Get to Have All the Fun, which is by Reginald Lewis.
Reginald Lewis, yes, sir.
And a lot of parallels, of his life, to my life, being an athlete, being a college athlete, kind of losing that passion, coming back to it. And then saying, what do I want to do with my life? And ended up graduating with a degree in finance from Washburn University. I was also a football player, and I played professional indoor football for a little bit. And so pursued finance and business and worked at some big institutions, big financial companies, worked at some startups doing global microfinance for women in developing countries. And did some consulting on my own. also launched a social enterprise here in Dallas when I first got here, called Dallas Black Professional Social Network. So I kind of always had this drive and motivation to bring together people around an idea, and that idea was, how do we better ourselves? And as I started digging deeper into what I was doing, I kind of found my passion by volunteering, and ended up finding my passion, and then seeing that in a place like Texas where you talk about Juneteenth and the idea that Texas didn't find out about being free until several years after we were actually emancipated. I knew that there was a lack of opportunity here for minority business owners in terms of representation, in terms of equity, in terms of resources and funding, in terms of representation and mentorship and investors. And so that kind of put me on a track to say, how can I attack this problem in a unique way that relates to our community? So that's kind of what got us all started.
No, that's amazing, man. You said a lot that I want to dissect and go into. For me, as a filmmaker, I came out with a documentary in 2021. It was called Black Men in White Coats. And we talked about the health disparities that exist for the Black community due to the lack of Black health care. I will ask you, do you know the percentage out of all the practicing physicians in America that are Black men?
15%.
2%.
2%. Wow.
And the reason why I say 2% is because you talk about out of all the venture capital. I set you up. I set you up for it. Out of all the venture capital that's going out, and I mean, it's so much money you can't even fathom, right? Only 2% is going to minority groups, and less than 1% going to Black Americans. And you talk about the people at the table making those decisions, less than 2% of them are Black Americans. How can us as a community break down some of those systemic and systematic barriers to getting the funding that we need to be able to bring our ideas to life?
I mean, it was definitely a two-part question. One on how do we increase awareness around even knowing that these opportunities exist, and then the other question is, how do we actually address the disparities and the inequities in the industry? And in my experience, I didn't come from a traditional venture background, right? I didn't go to Harvard or any of the Ivy League schools that they typically look for in the world of venture. And the reason that is because of access, right? Access to high net worth individuals, access to the forward-thinking individuals. I mean, some of the brightest minds, go to these schools. These brightest minds end up creating the most innovative products that change our behavior, that change how we think about life. And sometimes you have these diamonds in the rough, right? The people that, go to HBCUs, the people that go to community colleges, and then out of nowhere, they just come up with this amazing thing that changes the world. And so, I think it starts with exposure, right? And one of the things that we've tried to do as an organization to address the lack of representation in the industry is internships. And so we've been able to offer internships for students that probably couldn't even spell venture before until we met them, right? A lot like myself, I never saw a living, breathing Black venture capitalist until I was in my late 20s, early 30s, right?
Wow.
I was never exposed to it. I was never sat down and said on the golf course, so this is how this works, right? How other cultures, do that, and they have those systems and how they distribute information and wealth. So I say exposure is definitely one of them. The more we expose our younger generation, and I'm incredibly excited and proud of the younger generation. There's an organization called Black VC that focuses on undergrad and HBCU networks of getting people exposed, connected to internships. And I went to a Black Venture Summit in Tulsa last year around October. And I brought my family with me, and we took a picture, kind of like it was the last day, and we took a picture, and I remember looking at that picture, and I posted, and I was like, man, I never met a Black VC till I was 30.
Wow.
And my sons, I said, my two sons are in a room of 150 VCs right now. Right? And that's the power of transformation and exposure that they won't know right now the impact of that, but later that seed that was planted in them I can water that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you can't water if you don't even have a seed.
Can't be what you can't
Right.
see.
So for me, it was exposure. It was through books, you know,
Yeah.
that was kind of how I got exposed. And then eventually I just immersed myself in it so much that I said, this is the life that I want to live.
Yeah.
And so I met people, I met mentors, advisors, people in the space. I asked them questions. I traveled. I went from coast to coast to figure out what people were doing.
Yeah.
And I said, how do I create this here in Texas? And then the second part is the ecosystem has to change around what success looks like, right? And I think we're doing
I
this.
was like, go deeper in that. The ecosystem around what success looks like. Tell me what you mean by that. Break that down.
Yeah, that has to change. So I use the example all the time. I see we both got
The
you know,
nappy fro, the little twist.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Good juices and berries.
Yeah.
That's what we call it.
Yeah.
But there was a commercial I saw. It was a company, black-owned company, on Shark Tank, and it was the twist up combs.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how you get the little.
I got one in the
curls.
backpack. Yeah,
Right.
I just did before I got
one on my desk.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that if success only looks like one way and one culture is given the keys or the power to be able to define what success looks like, then we're all going to look the same, or we're never going to find anything new or innovative, right? And so if I'm a white middle-aged, Ivy League investor, I'm not looking for Jamal.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not looking for, Rudy, who has this innovative idea that only he understands because of this cultural innovation that we provide as people of color and as black people, that sometimes you can't define that in success when people just don't understand. They don't have proximity.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean when I say the ecosystem has to change around, like, how do we define what success looks like? And so I think as a culture as a whole, we're trying to move ourselves towards that, where how can we show up in spaces that are authentically, where we can be authentically ourselves, and still have the same level of success and output and production, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that society always puts on us and say that we have to change, right? And sometimes it's not us, it's the environment, right?
Yep.
And so like if a fish is sick, right? Like, is it the fish or is it the water that the fish is in? And so sometimes you got to change the water, right? And so what that means for us is finding spaces that are healthy and safe for us to be. And that's another topic in the discussion, but there's a lot of work that has to happen in both lanes, like on the ground with practitioners like myself, but then also within the ecosystem around like policies and really just continuing to see the Topes, founder of Calendly, right? Consistently seeing the black billionaires, billionaire unicorn companies. And then people will start to take more chances, right?
Sure.
Because now there's a groundswell of people who understand how to take ideas from, just a mere idea to a company at scale.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's the part that people miss when you talk about the venture industry itself, is that, VCs are looking for ideas that can scale.
Yeah.
Right.
That are profitable.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with being, we like to call a zebra, a zebra is let's say $10-20 million company that maybe you have no intentions to sell, but guess what? It creates generational wealth for you, your family, your family's family. Your core team's family. That is success. It isn't always IPO. Or I just sold to XYZ. So I think success looks different to everybody, and we just have to find our pathway and how we define success and be confident in that.
Yeah, no, you just put me on a new term. I hadn't heard zebra. I've heard gazelle before in terms
gazelle?
of companies, right? The ones that grow real fast. I hadn't heard zebra.
I got a whole alphabet of
So I thought that was interesting, right? We got the whole safari going. I would ask you talk about finding those ecosystems. So if you're talking to black entrepreneurs who may have an idea or some type of SaaS tech program that they have, I guess it's a two-part question. How do they get their logistics and all of the details in order to be attractive to an investor? That's number one. And part two, how do they find the right investors, right? And I don't even know if you want to define right investor, right? Because if you're going maybe with a SaaS product, that's a different investor than if you're going with a twist brush, right? So how would you kind of answer those two questions?
Yeah. the first question around like how do you position yourself to be attractive to an investor? Well, first you have to understand what are the incentives for an investor, right? Like what are investors looking for, right? They're looking for a big return.
Yes.
And so you as an entrepreneur have to say, what can I build in a space and in a market that is not super crowded? What can I build in a space that's not crowded? Not that doesn't have any competitors, because you're never going to be in a market. If a founder says I don't have any competitors, they haven't done enough market research, right? Yeah. And so if you reverse engineer that and start from the investor side and say, what are they looking for? They're looking for a big return. They want to make the most money possible, at least traditional VCs, right?
Sure.
Impact investors like myself and others maybe have different incentives, but most traditional VCs want to make the most money possible on any deal that they do, right?
Sure.
So starting there, the way that you make a big deal happen is by having having a market size that's big enough to have a large enough exit, right? Okay. So find something that you can build that has the exit potential of at least 1 billion or more, right? Because when you're looking at market sizing, there's no company that's ever going to capture the whole entire market, right? Yeah. But they want to know what's the biggest piece of the pie that you can capture within a certain allotted amount of time that they can have a liquidity event, right? Yeah. And so I wish more founders would start that way, but it doesn't work like that. A, because founders are hard-headed, and B, because founders are very passionate about what they're passionate about, right? And all that comes from their exposure. Right. So if I'm exposed like yourself, you said you were in marketing and multimedia, as kind of like your main thing. Yeah. Well, if that's what you're exposed to, if I said, hey, go build me $1 billion tech company, you would probably, first thing you would say was like, okay, in the marketing industry, what media? Yeah. You're going to go with what you know. You're going to go with what you know. Right. And sometimes what you know and what you're exposed to doesn't always equate to $1 billion idea. Yes. Right. Yeah. That's where exposure comes in. That's when you can take your skill set and apply it across different domains and different sectors and say, oh, I have this skill set in marketing and media, but what does that look like in the healthcare space? Yes. What does that look like in the entertainment and sports media space? Right. Yeah. And so I think that exposure is, what will drive more entrepreneurs of color to position themselves better for institutional VCs, right? Yep. And there's levels of funding, right? You got angels, you got super angels, you got micro VCs, and then you got these big and all the way up to private equity. It gets a little bit complex. And so the answer is always, it depends. Yeah. But I think as an entrepreneur, you first have to understand like what are the incentives of the investor and then reverse engineer that. Yeah. And I was going to say, not to cut you off, but you can change out the word investor for customer. Right. As well, right? If you're talking about an entrepreneur, hey, you want to make a sale, you got to think like the person that's going to be buying. What are their pain points? What are their pain points? Right. Yeah, we call it pains and gains, right? Yep. What are the things that are painful to them, or what are the things that are painful to them that you could solve, and what are the things that they could gain from your product, right? And then how do you meet the need of both of those things in your product? Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of finding VC, finding an investor, right? Not even say VC, just finding a loan for an investor, right? Because if you got an idea, you go to the bank, they're going to tell you to come back later, right? Probably not even that nicely, right? So how do you even find, let's just use the word funding, right? When you have an idea, maybe you have a business plan, development plan, how do you even find funding to bring it to fruition? Well, I'll say the good thing now is, with us being in this information age, that information is out there, right? Yep. And depending on where you live and the geography you live in, you could have a more robust startup ecosystem than others, like say you're in a major city like a Dallas or like a Miami or Atlanta or DC or Boston, those places, those resources are easy to find, right? Just by Googling, funding in Boston, right? Sure. Small business funding, startup funding in Atlanta, right? So Googling is one thing, but I like to say like there's a series of questions that you have to ask once you get there, right? Okay. And it's not about just knowing where to go for funding. It's about like understanding what type of capital you need, right, at your particular stage.
Yeah.
So oftentimes you see a lot of founders, particularly on the tech side, that spend a lot of money, booking flights, traveling, to different conferences, cold calling, cold emailing. They're spending a lot of time and energy trying to get in front of institutional VCs, and they don't even have a prototype or an MVP. But it all depends. Sometimes you can have neither one of those things, and you can still get an investment. It just depends. You might have $1 billion idea. You might, depending on your previous work, you could have been the number 2 employee at Apple, and they're like, okay, well, that's
we
different.
listening to you,
right? Like, okay, we'll take a meeting with you, right? So I think the more important question is understanding what type of capital you need. Obviously, the more free the capital is, the less strings attached, the better, right? Okay. So free capital, like pitch competitions, looking at SBA grants, looking at corporations that might have small business grants that they do on a cycle basis or maybe a theme basis, like Black History Month, Hispanic. They have these different things that happen. The free money is always going to be there and available. It's just a matter of like understanding, like what story are they looking for? How do I position myself to pitch? For that, if it's a pitch competition. So definitely always put time on your calendar to go after free money. That should be like at least 2% of your time. As a founder, you should be looking for free money out there. Even if you're beyond growth stage or whatever, you should always be looking for that type of capital. CDFIs, which stands for Community Development Financial Institution, which is an entity that we're on the verge of becoming a CDFI. They are community lenders, and so through the Community Reinvestment Act, they are designated and mandated by the federal government to lend to underserved communities, right? And so the challenge is that sometimes they still mirror the same underwriting qualifications as traditional banks and things of that sort, but they are meant to be an alternative lender that lend to people with like a less than perfect credit history or credit score. Maybe they don't have all of the collateral they might need or personal guarantee they might need. They'll do flexible things and they'll have different programs that come down from the SBA that'll help them get funded. I know we were talking about tech entrepreneurs, but for those folks that are on the other side of the fence, there are some resources out there for them too.
And I wanted, it's crazy, that was a great segue. I wanted to talk to the people on the other side of the fence, people like me that's not necessarily in the tech business world. In the previous answer, you talked about applying some of your skills that you've built, maybe that's in marketing or hospitality or cosmetics, that you can apply to the tech world. My question for you would be, you've seen so many founders, right, and talked to so many founders. What are some of the best ways ideas have been springboarded or fueled by their skills, right, that they may have had outside of the tech, right? I don't know anything about tech or coding outside of what I do on my iPhone, right? But what has been some good marriages that you've seen for somebody who may not be a tech person, have this great idea that's been successful?
We had a successful entrepreneur that came through one of our accelerators. We get a ton of founders, especially Black and brown founders that are non-technical founders, meaning like they are not the CTO, they're not the person that's doing the coding or the developing of the product. And one of the founders that particularly came through the program had taught himself how to trade in college. And so he was actually unhoused and slept in his car while he was in college. And taught himself how to code and started teaching other people how to code and hosting how to trade. And having trading groups that he would host and people would pay him, and that's how he kind of got on his feet. He came to us and he had an idea and kind of a website or a wireframe, but didn't have a product, didn't have an MVP, and after he came through the program of learning like all the kind of fundamentals of like, how do I position this product? How should I be thinking about my first hire? How should I be building my advisory board? He left the program and was able to connect with individuals like mentors and advisors that led him to then developing his product. And so he won a $25,000 equity investment in the accelerator program. And about, I want to say maybe 9 months to a year and a half later, he raised his seed round, and we invested another $100,000 in his company. And I think about 2 years later, he's now about to raise a Series A, or he's in the middle of raising a Series A round at a valuation that I won't name, but it is quite healthy.
Significant.
Yeah, significant. And
amazing.
That's just one example of someone who like didn't know how to code and didn't know anything about the tech industry, but was able to find an ecosystem like an accelerator that has built in social capital, financial capital, intellectual capital, knowledge capital. Those are the things, and that's why they call it an accelerator, right? Because it would take him 3 times as long as it would have for him to do those things on his own versus going to a place like an incubator, an accelerator that had those relationships, right? It takes a long time to build those relationships. And so going through these small business programs or these accelerator programs that have mentors and advisors, I mean, that's why they're meant to help accelerate your growth and help you not make the same mistakes that maybe those that are teaching made, or maybe others that are coming through the program are made, and save money, right?
Sure.
So that's an example of like, people who have an idea, and the best founders are the ones that are resourceful, right? Meaning that I don't have to have all the answers, but I have an amazing work ethic, and I'm going to find the people who do have the right answers. And that's the kind of founder that I want to back. Work ethic, it's about, can you gain market share? Can you sell? At the end of the day, it comes down to, can you sell? Can you get customers? Can you get traction? So
absolutely. Can you sell? That's the key right there. I thought it was interesting. You were talking about the young man who had the stock trading idea. You talking about not being housed, sleeping in his car. I know when you talked to our producer, you talked about some of your adopted struggle, right? So I want you to tell us a little bit more about your story, that adopted struggle, and why you felt that it was necessary to get to where you are.
Yeah, man. I think sometimes as leaders, especially like I would say millennial leaders, I'm on the older millennial side, and we come from the microwave generation where like we want success right now. We want to be the 6-figure CEO like right away. And that's a good motivation to have. But like, how do you tailor that in a healthy way that allows you to grow? And it's not about just getting to success, because you realize that the journey and the process is actually more fulfilling, and you learn a lot of the lessons that you need to learn to get to the point, to the end point that you're trying to get to. And so for me, I had came out of a world where, I was like 30 under 30, and I was leading all these initiatives in the city. I was the youngest city plan commissioner, and, like in charge of some really important things in the city at a very young age. And it was kind of related to a Bible story, but I won't take y'all to church today. I'll wait till Sunday for that. But I felt like in that stage, in that moment in time, that God showed me a lot of my future ahead of time. Almost like he exposed me to like the highest of the high, right? So I'm sitting in meetings with billionaires and millionaires who literally like decide and construct the fabric of Dallas, right? And I'm sitting in meetings with these folks, and I'm hearing the conversations that they're having. I'm in the same rooms with them. I'm a fly on the wall. I'm a peon to them. I'm a foot soldier to them. But being exposed to all of that, and then having it all taken away, right? And I say having it all take away. Before that, I was in a relationship that wasn't, I would say, wasn't just very conducive to me being an entrepreneur, right? And I think that's something that entrepreneurs don't invest a lot of time in terms of their relationships, their personal relationships, whether it be intimate or whether it be family or friends,
or the business relationships.
Or business relationships.
I'll put that in there too.
Yeah. But they don't understand what it's like to be an entrepreneur's friend. to be an entrepreneur's wife, to be an entrepreneur's, you know, insert
parent, anything,
whatever
sibling,
it is,
yeah,
right?
all of that, yeah.
Like there has to be a level of grace and understanding and patience, understanding that they're on a mission,
Yes.
and they're trying to achieve something that you don't even see, but they see it as clear as day, right? And so you have to nurture that in a certain way that allows them to grow. Long story short, I ended up, we both ended up actually selling all of our belongings and moved in together to save for a house. And in that process, we were doing, you know, marriage counseling and stuff like that to kind of just, you know, do the marriage counseling like you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And in that time, we just kind of both figured out that like, yeah, we probably just not meant, you know, not meant to be together.
Yeah.
And that was cool. It was cordial. Like we both decided that was best for both of our lives, you know. It's not easy being with an entrepreneur, you know. It's also not easy being with someone who works in healthcare that works 12-hour days, and you know. So it was very difficult and challenging. But at the same time, I had just I was in a new position where I was doing fundraising.
Okay.
And I had just brought in one of our largest donors for a project that actually just got kicked off about 3 or 4 months ago. And this was like 2016. So it was several years in the making, but I raised the first dollar, the first grant for that piece of land that was purchased. And so we moved in our office downtown, and it was my dream to work downtown. I was like, oh, I'm downtown.
Yeah. It's the movies now. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I'm like,
Reginald Lewis, here I come.
Man, I'm looking out my window, and I got the big, you know, I don't know what building it is, but it has the big Mavericks player. They always have some sports.
Like the little banners hanging down.
It's like the banner hanging down,
Yeah.
you know. And I was like, man, I made it, you know, like, like literally like the next day. I mean, I'm you know, doing my Instagram. This is before Instagram stories and all that stuff. But I'm doing my Instagram stuff, and I'm like, all right, I made it. Like the next day I come in the office, the HR lady is there from San Francisco, and they're just like, call me in the office. And I'm like, what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
So got laid off, you know, the job, like literally like after like, I literally thought like, okay, this is where we're going. But I didn't realize that God has shown me the blueprint for what I'm doing now back then. Yeah. Even though I didn't see it. And so back to like selling all my belongings, moving out of the, you know, now I just got laid off my job and I'm starting a business at the same time. So you have those three things going on at the same time. The idea was, I mean, I could go back to corporate, right? Or I can, you know, we were talking about faith journey. Yeah. Or I can step out on faith and put 2 feet into this vision, into this seed that's been planted for me to do. Because I was doing Impact Ventures as my 5 to 9.
Gotcha.
And then I had my full-time thing.
Yeah.
But that was paying the bills for me to be able to do the, the 5 to 9.
Yeah.
So when that carpet got, you know, the rug got pulled from under me, I had that choice, man. And it, like you said, it was an adopted struggle, but I said, you know what? I could either endure this. We have a saying in my fraternity called weeks of sacrifice for a lifetime of pleasure. Caesar's motto. And at that time, it was either go back to corporate or jump 2 feet in this. And when I did, we ended up, we had the first co-working space in South Dallas that was focusing on Black and Brown communities. And of course, you know, South Dallas has its challenges with infrastructure and internet and things of that sort. And so I was like, you know what, man, I'm gonna thug it out and you know, from you know, the car to inside the space to, you know, the couple of winters when it got too cold and you know, and I can share some experiences, man, for sure, of just that. But it humbled me so much that I realized that any successful entrepreneur, I don't care if people say you're self-made, nobody is self-made. Yeah, nobody is self-made. I realized in that experience, the humbling experience of that is that everything that got me to that point in terms of my intellect, my drive, my motivation, my skills, anything that was of my doing, like that got me here. but it wasn't going to get me to the next level. And so it made me value people in a different way that I think I did when I was younger, because I think when we're younger, we think, oh, I got this myself. I don't need nobody. I'm gonna just do it on myself.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen if you want to be successful in entrepreneurship, right? You can own a job, and there's nothing wrong with owning a job, but that's not my idea of entrepreneurship. I have other things that I feel like are planted inside for me to do. I can't do that if I own a job. Right? Like, it's my business, but really I'm self-employed. I own a job. And so being a business owner, if you think about like Rich Dad, Poor Dad's, quadrants, right? You got self-employed, you got business owner, you got investor, and you got employee. Moving from the self-employed to the business owner, it takes an entirely different set of skills. Different mindset. You go from being an independent contributor, meaning like I'm the best at performing the thing that I do, right? To now coaching and motivating and inspiring and managing the people that do. Right. And those are two different skills. That's why you get a lot of people that are really good at doing something that are terrible managers. Right. Because they're trying to get people to do it the way they would do it. Right. And so it's still a skill that I still challenge and struggle with. But I try to go outside of my way to find tools to help me be a better leader, manager, coach, inspirer, motivator, etc. Because at the end of the day, I can only go as far as my people can take me, right? And any successful entrepreneur, small business owner that you've heard speak, they always bring it back to their people, because at the end of the day, it doesn't go without a team. It's a team effort, and so business is a team sport for sure.
Gonna go way off the show notes because you just explained my life perfectly. So been in business 9 years, but it's been self-employed the entire 9 years, and you end up burning out, and now you're trying to figure out what to do. It's interesting how you explain. I've never heard anybody explain it like this, where you're talking about when you're young, you feel like you can figure it out, because I'm just synthesizing and listening to you. I'm like, you went from 0 to 100 when you're 21, 22, and you did it, right? 0 to 100 grand, you got all but I always tell people, like, you can hustle your way from 0 to 100. You can't hustle yourself from 100 to 1,000, right? Or if that's 100,000 to 1,000,000, whatever the number you want to fill in, you can't hustle yourself from that point to that point. So going from that self-employed mindset, those self-employed skills, to that business owner mindset, business owner skills, I would ask you, this is just for me personally, not even in the show notes. I would ask you, what was the first skill, the first step that you took into making that transition?
One of the skills that and it's sometimes it's a natural strength that we have to turn into a skill, right? But the ability to exude passion that connects to influence, I feel like that is a number one skill that leaders need. The ability to get excited about something, and that excitement then starts to pour over into impacting other people to get excited about it. At the end of the day, if you can't get excited about something yourself, how are you going to expect someone else to get excited about it? And at the very early stages, you don't have all the things that people might need to feel 100% ready to like jump in the ship with you, right? Like, you don't have the benefits, you don't have the health benefits.
You barely got enough to pay them,
right? You barely have enough to pay them, let alone the full salary, the PTO, the
benefits, just the 40-hour structure,
right? So I say that there's three things. So passion that leads to influence, vision that can see around corners. So vision, being able to see a vision so clear, but not be so blinded by it that you can't see that risk or that car or that truck that's coming around the corner that's about to smack you, because you're so pigeonholed into what it is that you think the world should look like, that you're ignoring the market changing and shifting, right? So those two things. And then I would say the last thing is the ability to effectively articulate and take an idea and distill it down to actions, right? Because at the end of the day, if I can articulate to you what it is that where we're going in terms of the direction, then we're just going in circles, right? And so those three things right there, if you're taking those three things into a room with a potential, I don't care if it's a customer, a client, a potential partner, collaborator, a vendor, a board member, an advisory, like any one of your stakeholders who you interact with, if you're taking those three skill sets into a room, you're going to be successful, right? You're going to be successful. And so it also takes a little bit of humility and tailoring your ego and knowing that it's not about you, but it's about the mission that you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest part of a lot of young entrepreneurs is taking themselves out of the equation because they want to be, they want to get the accolades and they want to get the awards. Well, why do you
the
think
validation?
Right. Yeah. But that takes years and let the work speak for itself. Yeah. Right. And so for me, there was a lot of awards that a lot of my friends would be like, oh, you should try to get the 40 under 40 or whatever. Or you should, I'm like, I haven't done anything yet. Yeah. And they're looking at me like, what? And I'm like, in my mind, I feel like if I'm going to get an award about, let's say 40 under 40 or I was named Dallas 500, DCO 500. I want to be able to say, this is what I've done, not what I'm going to do, you know, and I hear a lot of people talk about what they're going to do and not what they've done. And so I think that part of just taking themselves out of the equation and inserting language that says we, you know, versus I, right? Or how might we, or how can we work together? Like those are the biggest things. And then you start to get into the nuances of leadership styles and learning different styles of people and how they like to be managed. And that takes a while too, because there's a rhythm that you have to find with those individuals. But it really starts with knowing up front what your end goal is, right? Knowing up front what your end goal is, and understanding what does it take to get there, right? So if I'm a service-based businesses, or if you're like a consulting, you know, company out there and you're like, I'm in this rat race of owning a job, you know, like how do I get out of that? You know, it really takes you thinking more strategically about who your client base is, right? With our entrepreneurs, we use, we're going to go back to the animal kingdom here. Okay, all right. So we got gazelle, zebras, what we got next? Yeah. And so we actually teach them through this model called the forfeit model, which is a variation of what people like to say product market fit. And it talks about your clients, right? And let's say we use an example of a hair care company, right? Because it's easy to understand. Elephants are at the top of the customer, right? The market customer, right? This is an elephant. An elephant can pay you $1 million a year. Let's say you can make $1 million a year from an elephant, right? I'm a healthcare company. I'm going to sell my products to Target, right? Target, Walmart, you know, that's an elephant. Then from the elephant, you got like a giraffe or like a hippo, you know, a smaller animal, but still big considered the animal kingdom, right? And so now you got maybe like your smaller tier, you know, types of retailers, right? Like Farmers Market or Central Market or, you know, more indie types of things like Sprouts or like, well, Sprouts is huge now, but it used to be just
the point. I got you. Yeah.
All the way down to like rabbits, which are like, okay, I'm gonna sell to beauty shops and beauty salons, right? From there, I can make 500K, you know, a year, you know, from them, and then all the way down to individuals who might be like, let's see, like rabbits, or we go rabbits, and then I think it's fleas. Fleas are like a subscription model, like the dollar club, you know, like, okay, you can pay me $1, right? And so I think sometimes in the service or the consulting space, right, we can spend a lot of, like, if it takes me the same amount of time to make $1 million than it does, you know, $100, then where do you need to spend your time? Right? On the $1 million, right? And so at that point, it's like, it's a numbers game, right? If I got a client, and I'm gonna bring it back down to the real world. If I got a client that's putting me on a $10,000 retainer, right? Okay, that's $10,000 a month that's coming in. So now let me stagger that with a couple of, elephants.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So instead of doing marketing, branding, and things for a small business owner, try doing that for a lower middle market company, which is to be like 5 to 20 million. Right. Find a lower middle market company that might have some gaps, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of companies that are at the 5 million mark that have a lot of operational gaps.
They have more gaps than the smaller ones, yeah.
Right. Just because they're making more money doesn't necessarily mean they're more efficient,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes it comes from us thinking a little bit more strategically, because once I can get that, let's say I got that one elephant.
Yeah.
Now I'm making $1 million. And then I still have my 10,000. Now I can take a portion of that $1 million and hire a second person that can do the work for me.
Yeah.
Now I got somebody who can do the work, and now that frees me up to go find more elephants.
Yes. Yeah.
So now I'm out of the job.
Yep.
And I've replaced somebody with the job, and now I'm able to build the business, and now I'm able to work on the business versus in the business.
Yeah.
So now you're creating processes for that individual. Now you figure out, oh, okay, now I need a graphic designer. I need a copywriter. Now I got a whole agency, and that's how a lot of these big agencies came to be. They started like that. And then 3 or 4 of the partners got together and said, let's bring all of this together. We'll be the partners in the group. I actually spent a lot of time watching Mad Men.
Okay.
A lot of lessons in Mad Men.
Yeah.
Very, very. I will speak against a lot of not bigotry, but like just the treatment of women in the workplace back in that time, like in the 60s. But if you watch Mad Men, there's a lot of business nuggets in just seeing how they run the business. That's why I love the show so much, because it just gives a real life look at the day-to-day life of running a marketing and advertising agency, right? And so movies like that, they give you insight, but really it's about understanding where do you want to be as a company, and then taking that strategic approach. It's possible for everyone, and there's somebody out there that's also tired of owning a job. And so at that point, it's like, well, how do I go find someone that I can team up with so that we can go after bigger clients, and then we can build the infrastructure underneath us so we can get ourselves out of the job, right? And so that's the beautiful thing of entrepreneurship, is that for me, money always exposes what's already in you in terms of your value system, right?
Makes you more who you are.
It makes you more of who you are. And so for me, I know that because I was raised in service, and I was raised in giving back, and I was raised in being a blessing to other people, I know that the more money I make, the more good I'm going to do in the world. Right. And I think and I'm talking to myself when I say this, because I think if I constantly keep that on the forefront of my mind, then any situation that I walk into, it's almost like I'm assuming that it's going to be a success. I'm assuming it's going to work out.
Sure.
Because there's nothing but good that's going to come from it.
There you go.
Right? Like you got some people that they're just naturally evil, and they've always been evil, and their core values reflect their evilness. And the more money they make, the more evil things that they do.
Right? Absolutely.
So that's the thing that I try to keep at the forefront. And I think when other people can feel that, and other people can understand that, then they're more open to working with you and to doing business with you, because they know at the end of the day, like, I'll probably give away more than I make. So
we're gonna have to do a whole part 2 episode on getting the elephants and scaling it out in the processes.
Right.
We'll do a whole
it takes longer
episode.
to get the elephants.
But
if you think in real life, if you try to catch an elephant, I mean,
you gotta do some work.
You might just scoop it up, but an elephant,
and even once you get the elephant, to be able to process the elephant, it's a totally different. Because even
where you gonna put it?
Because even if somebody gave you $1 million right now to do a service for them, can you even fulfill the service? Right. So again, that's part 2. We'll get to that. That's part 2. But this is called the Secrets of Silent Success podcast. So I would ask you, Benjamin, what is your secret to success? We don't put that one in the show notes.
Oh,
I like to
okay.
surprise you with that one. Yeah.
Secrets to success. Unyielding drive to do good. And unlimited creativity.
We'll leave it there. Cool. Appreciate you, brother. We'll do it again, man. We got to do it again. Appreciate you.